Thanks for listening to Rico 12 today. Before we get started on this, I just want to give you a little heads up that this message is super powerful, but the audio is a little bit glitchy and a little bit inconsistent. But hang around for the message. It will be worth it. Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin. I am your host and a beautifully imperfect, stumbling, bumbling child of an absolutely powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict. Rico 12 is all about exploring the common threads of addiction and sharing tools and hope from those on a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places to learn and support one another. Our speakers represent various fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, thus showing the common threads of recovery no matter our addiction or affliction. Today's speaker for the 263rd meeting is Krissy F, a first-time Rico 12 speaker. Her chosen topic today is My Painful Past is the Key to Helping Others, and I look forward to hearing her message here in just a few minutes. First, for a little bit of business. Rico 12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts and social media communities. To learn more, listen more, connect more, or just hang out and learn and grow with us, you can check out the other podcasts that you can find at www.rico12.com. That's RECO12.com. And to join in our social communities, you can check out links that I will be putting in the chat of this meeting and in the show notes of the podcast. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue our mission. Thanks to our spearheads for new and repeat contributors. Thanks this week to Todd and Barbara. Your donations really help in this project. If you out there also feel the desire to become a spearhead and support this cause, please consider visiting rico12.com/support or click on the links that I will have in the chat here or in the show notes of the podcast for either one-time or monthly donation options. Your support, not just financially, but with your word of mouth, makes a difference in keeping us being able to share these messages of recovery. We look forward to each meeting to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I will introduce our guest speaker for today, Krissy F, and give a little bit of background information on her. Only by the grace of God, Krissy F is still alive. She has been sober since December 6th of 2006, but stayed sick sober for a long time, suffering from untreated alcoholism without realizing it. Krissy did the program her way, avoiding certain steps and excluding God. For 14 and a half years, she hung on by not drinking and going to meetings. When she finally hit rock bottom emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, she surrendered to the 12-step program and embraced her need for God. This surrender allowed her to give with power, love, and a transformative way of life, enabling Krissy to be happy, joyous, and free. Krissy, take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Justin. Hi, everybody. My name's Krissy. I am a recovered alcoholic, but for the grace of God and the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And like my little bio says, I stayed sick sober for a long time. Unfortunately, I had no idea how sick I was. Thought I was going along pretty okay, except for the fact that I was suffering with the bedevilments that you can read all about on page 52 of our textbook, the big book. I was having a lot of trouble with personal relationships, and I definitely was still prey to misery and depression. I was unhappy, even though I was doing happy things. I was still in a lot of fear, and I definitely felt pretty miserable. Even though I was doing joyful things, I couldn't feel joy. So, I lived a life that was without alcohol. I had been separated from alcohol and Valium in the hospital in 2006, and I haven't had to take either one of those into my system since. Thank you, God. I went through a detox that put me into AA, and I went to AA, and they told me to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, get a sponsor. I did everything they told me to do, except for the things I didn't want to do. So I think I'm a typical alcoholic when I say that. I was very, very, very anti-God anything. If you started talking to me and used that word in the same sentence, I was already not listening or maybe even shooting daggers at you, like, I'm going to kill you if you keep talking about that. And if you didn't stop talking about that, I was definitely leaving the room, and I would leave in a huff, and I would be in a temper tantrum because I was not happy about that. So, they talk about developing a personal relationship with the God of your understanding as there is a solution in this program. And the problem for me was I didn't want that solution. So I was going to do everything else. Problem is that every step pretty much requires me to talk about God. So I ended up doing lots of other things. I depended on people. I did a lot of therapy. I went to a lot of spiritual retreats. I read a lot of self-help books. I treated the meetings like self-help meetings. If you taught me something, I'd take it home and do it by myself, because I suffered from the disease of, I got this. I don't need that. I got this. So I went about my business. I had a relationship with a sober guy. He was all I really needed. So I didn't need you people even, I just had my sober guy. So that was basically my higher power. I called him my higher partner these days, HP. So as long as I had that higher power, I was safe. I knew I wouldn't get into too much trouble. I wouldn't drink again. He would keep me safe and protected. The problem was I had the wrong he. Like if you're, I had a he, but he was a human he. And, I didn't have a God the Father, or I didn't have like Jesus or Lord, or, I'm not a big, I'm not trying to push any particular religion on anybody, but for me, I had so much prejudice against God the Father. And also, if you talked about Jesus, I was already like, whoa. And they don't do that typically in the meetings that I went to. So that was cool. But they did talk about God, and I didn't like that. So when I suffered enough in sobriety, and I started to have like a breakdown, kind of like the same breakdown I had when I knew there wasn't enough booze or Valium in the world to make me feel okay and I was screwed. The same thing happened at 14 and a half years of chemical sobriety, I'll call it. And so I realized I was having a meltdown and I needed something more. And the beautiful thing is that I went to that's when Zoom meetings had started, because it was during the pandemic, and I was exposed to a lot of different meetings. I wasn't limited to just the meetings in my local radius. And I heard a lot of things that I hadn't heard in other meetings. And maybe I was more ready, or maybe I just was subjected to different things. But I was listening to step study meetings. They were talking about the steps, talking about it, taking people through the steps. And I was like, when I was finally ready, and it took having a meltdown to be ready. I mean, I don't know what it takes for anybody else, but for me, I had to have a breakdown to become willing and ready. And I think they say in the big book, repeated humiliations and the final crushing of our self-sufficiency is what sets us up to be like willing to pick up this spiritual toolkit, like the flimsy reed, like a drowning person. Like I was a drowning person, and I was finally ready to grab that flimsy reed that, ended up being the loving and powerful hand of God. But so when that happened, I reached out to a woman who had been talking very enthusiastically about God. And she annoyed me. I'm not going to lie. I was like, oh God, she just like something about her. There's something about her. But the thing is that when I had the meltdown, I knew she's the one I had to call. So how did that work out? She's the one I reached out to. And that's when my whole life started to change. And because she was willing to talk freely and enthusiastically about her personal relationship with God, it enabled me to think, well, maybe it's not so bad, and I became willing to go through the 12 steps, which I had never been willing to do. And she took me through those steps, and I had to say that set aside prayer that Justin said at the beginning of this recording. And every day I had to say it. It was a little bit different, but God helped me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, everything I think I know about others, and everything I think I know about my recovery, so I can have an open mind and a new experience with all of these things, which I desperately needed. Please help me see the truth. And every time I asked, please help me see the truth, something happened, and I started to hear things more. I heard things differently. I had to be seeking it, though. So it makes me think of the ABCs on page 60 of the big book. God could and would if he were sought. And so I have to seek. And if God is like a God of truth, life, and the way, then I have to seek the way. I have to seek the truth. So that's me seeking the truth. So I started to go through that 12-step work. And I started to get an open mind, which I had never had before. I was very closed off. I was stubborn. I was refusing absolutely with like absolute spite and hate. I was not going to let God be a part of my life, nor was I going to I'd go through all this step stuff. The only time I ever went to begin to do the steps was when I was really suffering because a relationship had ended or something. And I would get back together with the person. I'd be like, never mind, I'm all set. Just kidding. I don't really need that, So I had to really get to the point where I really needed something more. There's a line in Bill's story. It says something like, I had, for the first time, maybe I needed and wanted God, and he came. And that was me. I needed and wanted God, and he came. And what happens from there is, as I went through the 12 steps and I learned about all of my alcoholism, I realized that I had thought that I was a success because I just wasn't drinking. I thought the goal was to not drink. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know any different. So I was a success. They used to say things like that in a meeting. They'd say, you're a raving success if you put your head on the pillow at the end of the night and you haven't had a drink today. So I was like telling myself for a decade plus, I'm a raving success because I haven't drank today. The problem is I was dying with all of my personality stuff. My character defects were killing me. They were destroying my life, and I didn't know that. So I didn't even know what alcoholism was, really. I just knew I couldn't drink, and that was true. So I was like at least step one a little bit over about alcohol. So something in my eye, probably reminding me that I was blind and now I can see. Like I literally was blind. I could not see what was going on. I had scales of pride, scales of prejudice, like literally blinding me. So everything started to kind of like things were coming into view. I was starting to see where all of my all of my ideas, all of my ways, I had to be willing to cast them all aside. And the more I did that, the more I sought God's help by prayer, which it's kind of funny. When I was in a meeting at like 7, I don't know, maybe even 12 years sober, right? Before this all happened, they were talking about prayer. And I spoke with a friend after the meeting and I was like, I don't pray. And he said, yes, you do. I was like, hell no, I don't. I was proud to say that I didn't pray. That's my attitude. I was like, nope, I'm not one of you religious people who prays, who does things like reading Bible or anything like. I'm not one of those people, But I've become one of those people. I pray. I connect with God every day. I know that I can't do this by myself. There's a reading. I'd like to read it actually because there's a couple of things in the book that really stood out for me. I know my topic that I wanted to talk about is that my painful past is the key to helping others. And that is very true. But I can't transmit something that I have not gotten. So I have to make sure that I've gotten myself restored to sanity and I am reborn, which is what the big book promises me. And I am starting to practice this way of life, and I'm living this in all of my affairs. And I have a new power, and I have this love and a way of life that really takes me to a whole different level of how I live my life. They call that the fourth dimension of existence: happiness, freedom, usefulness. I never could feel happy. I definitely felt like I was not free. I don't know what word to call that, but I was definitely not free. And I was never happy. I felt like a useless person. I worked helping people for a living, but I still couldn't feel useful. My heart didn't feel that, and the problem is, I'm a little all over the place, sorry. But the problem is I wasn't doing what they suggested in the book, which is I have to perfect and enlarge my spiritual life through self-sacrifice and work for others. And I wasn't self-sacrificing. I was working with others and getting paid for it, mind you. So none of that fits into the details of like 12-step work where I'm actually sacrificing of myself for somebody else. That I wasn't living out the altruistic idea of the program. So back to what I was going to read to you. On page 116 in the big book, it talks about how we have elsewhere remarked how much better life is when lived on a spiritual plane. If God can solve the age-old riddle of alcoholism, he can solve your problems too. And then it goes on to describe how we live our lives with a afflicted, by the way, which is just suffering with pain, of pride, self-pity, vanity, self-centeredness, selfishness, dishonesty. Okay, so these are some of my afflictions, which I lived with wholeheartedly. And it says, apply spiritual principles in our lives, and we will begin to see the desirability of doing that, because we're going to start to live a different way. The next paragraph describes me. At first, I'll put it in first person, I did not believe I needed this help. And they're talking about God. God could solve the age-old riddle. And I didn't believe that I needed God. That is a fact. I did not believe that. I thought on the whole that I was a pretty good person, capable of being nice and capable of living my life as long as I could manage everything out there and control everything out there, and everybody did it the way I thought they were going to do it. As long as everything worked out just right, I could be perfectly happy. That's why, it's kind of crazy, but that's the way I live. And then it says, but it was a silly idea that I was too good to need God. I love that line. It's a silly idea that I'm too good to need God. Not only is it silly, it was like, grave. It was like dangerous for me to believe that, I went through life thinking I don't need God. And ironically, it's the thing I needed the most. I didn't know that. So then, on page 124 in the big book, I love what it talks about, actually backing up to 123. It says we're plagued, by specters of the past. Those are ghosts. I've got ghosts haunting me all the time, specters of the past from my drinking career and other stuff that may or may not have had to do with drinking, but either way, they're haunting me, right? And it talks about, escapades, humiliating, shameful, tragic. And my first impulse is to bury these skeletons in a dark closet and padlock the door. Well, that's what I tried to do for decades of my life. I mean, the first 50 years of my life, I had a painful past. It started when I was like 5, and I tried to bury it ever since, there were more and more skeletons over time that I was trying to padlock away in that dark closet. It just kind of accumulated. My closet was pretty full. So it says that, I might be possessed by the idea that my happiness can only be based upon forgetfulness of the past. Forgetfulness, by the way, is another word for oblivion. And I try to reach that state of oblivion any way I can. How can I forget my painful past? Let me count the ways, I'll distract myself with, this relationship, that person I'm going to chase after. Maybe I'm obsessing over something else. Anything I can put my mind on that will take me away from, thinking about my painful past. Instead of being able to face life successfully, handle it, and move on, I wanted to ignore it, shove it under the carpet, and never look at it again. That kept me very, very sick for a long time. So then it says, we think that such a view, meaning that I want to tuck away my painful past, that such a view is in direct conflict with our new way of living. And the new way of living they're talking about in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is to be helpful, to be able to help other people where other non-alcoholic people may not understand what it means, or addicted people might not understand. So I'm in a very special, unique position where I can help people because I have this experience. So it leads into what Henry Ford is talking about. He says experience is a thing of supreme value in life. And if one is willing to turn the past to good account, that's when our experience becomes of value. Well, how do I turn my experience to good account? I mean, I actually can't do that. I need God's help with that, because I tried to turn my past experiences in. I couldn't do it. I needed help. And that was the spiritual help that I needed. So it says we're going to grow in our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. That was exactly what's happening for me. I take my past, and I don't have to live with the shame. I don't have to live with I'm a victim to life anymore. I don't beat myself up anymore. There's all these different character defects that I learn about in my inventory. I tend to do this thing called self-loathing, or I tend to, become really impatient or intolerant, unforgiving and unloving, and that can be of myself or the past or other people from my past. And I'm living in all of that sort of hate. It's all a version of hate for me. And I don't know, one day I woke up and I was like, I can't hate anymore. It's too painful. I don't want to hate anymore. I want to be able to love. And so this is when using the program and realizing everything that I'm powerless over, all of my past, all of those experiences, all of the regrets, all of the resentments, all of the just the ways that I had learned how to live. I mean, everything that I kept repeating over and over again that I couldn't seem to stop. I was powerless over all that stuff, but I did know finally, like step 2, because my life became unmanageable. And now step 2 would say that there's a power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. And sanity is a big word to describe being sane, which is to be sane and sound are synonymous. And it means I'm actually restored to health. It means I have a sound mind, body, spirit. It means that I am founded in truth. I'm unbroken. I'm whole. I'm complete. There's a sense of me being brought back to wholeness that happens when I turn to God and realize I can't do that for myself, but there is a God that can for me. And so that's when I start to be willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Step 3, and I'm going to put my life in God's hands, and I'm going to seek out God's will for me. What choices am I going to make today that are going to be a good demonstration of God's power, love, and his way of life? And I asked somebody once, how do I know what God's will for me is? And they said, well, you might want to read the Bible, the Word of God. I was like, oh no, not the Bible! Don't tell me that. I was like, I can't do that. No, but I lay aside my prejudice. These days, I lay aside my prejudice, and I'm open to all of that. What does the Word say? What is the Word? And I'm open to learning lessons from many sources these days. And I'm looking for these principles by which I can live. And the Big Book teaches us many of them. And there's all these spiritual principles that will set me up for this beautiful life, a beautiful, beautiful life, of harmony, of brotherly love, sisterly brotherly love, none of which I had or wanted for a long time. I was caught up in hate and blame and criticisms and shame and all that stuff. It was like I was in this ditch and I couldn't get out for the longest time, but like somehow I got pulled out, because I was desperate enough. So it says, our painful past may be of infinite value to others who are still struggling with their problem. And we think that each of us who has been relieved, and that's me, relieved. It does say in the 3rd step prayer, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self. So I have to know where my relieved came from. Because if I think I relieved myself, I am very much being dishonest. I am lying to myself. I'm fooling myself. I have taken credit for something that I was incapable of doing for decades. So now I know the truth. The truth is I was relieved of the bondage of self, and it was because of God, not me. So I heard a guy sharing in a meeting once. He said, I'm sober today, but for the grace of God, I take absolutely no credit for my sobriety. And that pissed me off. I was like, what are you talking about? I worked really hard for this sobriety. It was like, no, I didn't. Me working really hard got me a lot of suffering and a lot of sick, sober, untreated alcoholism. When I actually gave credit to God and knew that that was the source, that was what actually brought me back to life, really, to wake up the spirit of God that dwells within me and to start seeking that in all things, that's when everything shifted and changed for me. And they talk about being reborn. I was reborn because I surrendered. I surrendered to the idea that I could do it myself. That's gone. Like, God, please take that one, because I can't. I can't. He can. I think I'll let him. I hear people say that. I was like, I can't, but I won't admit it. So I'm going to tell myself I can, and I won't let him. I think that was my recipe for true love. But these days, I am surrendered, and I'm willing to always first things first it. And I heard a first things first version that I loved. It's not just get up, brush your teeth, and put your pants on. It's first things first, like, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and then all things will be added unto you. First things first. Go to God first. So God first, first things first. That's what it means for me these days. And so my painful past, and I have been relieved. And it says, we think that anyone who's been relieved owes something to those who have not. And when the occasion requires, each of us should be only too willing to bring former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. Showing this line right here, showing others who suffer how I was given help is the very thing that makes my life so worthwhile now. I'm making it first person, but that's true. It's true. The first time I started to sponsor somebody else and take them through the big book, like someone did for me, and I watched as I was like putting their hand in the hand of God. I was like, hey, have you met God? Let's see if we can make that connection here. I didn't think, oh, I'm fixing you, I'm helping you, I'm saving you, I'm rescuing you. I knew exactly what was happening. I'm like, we're going to go through these steps, and I'm going to get you. Like, you're going to reach for that flimsy reed yourself. And when you catch it, you're going to be like, whoop, up you go. You're going to float right up to the top. You're going to feel that experience yourself. And you're going to be like, wow, what just happened? Because it's very powerful. And I've witnessed it enough times to know. And it's like, it makes my heart so full and so happy. And like, I feel this like joy that I can't describe. And I don't know if people who haven't experienced it will get it, but maybe those of you who have experienced it, it's like to watch somebody kind of wake up, to watch the lights come on, to watch them come back to life. Oh my God. And I get to play a part of that. Like, I can't even imagine, how does it get better than that? Like, I used to think all these other things made me happy, and they didn't. They gave me a temporary happy that was so short-lived that it was like maybe a few hours, kind of like the length of however long a Tylenol lasts. I would be like, good, I'm happy for 4 hours. What's next? There was always a what's next. It was never enough. So with this stuff, my heart just stays pretty full and content. I feel like contentment and gratitude. I know that I've been given this incredible gift. And the more I share it with others, the more unselfish I am being, and the better I feel. God takes care of me when I take care of his kids. It's kind of like the more I put out to the world and contribute to life, that I am taken care of. It just happens. It's hard to know how or why it does, but that's just the way it does for me. And then it says, love this line, cling to the thought that in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. With it, you can avert death and misery for them. And that is so true. We have people dying. There are people literally dying out there. There are people who are 15, 20, 30 years sober dying, because there's people who don't know this yet. I was one of them for 14 years, and I was dying inside. It was a slow death, but it was still like a spiritual death, like long-term, slow torture. And so this ability to have a spiritual toolkit that is produced by this big book here, Alcoholics Anonymous big book, and to be able to share that with somebody else is like one of the greatest gifts I have. And I used to tell myself I'm helping people, but I wasn't. Now I'm helping people, and I know it's true, and it's a totally different ball game. And it talks a lot about how we are like walking around as a demonstration of God's power, love, and way of life. The third step prayer says we're going to have victory over our difficulties. We're going to bear witness to other people of God's power and love and way of life. There's other parts in the book. I wrote a couple of them down so I wouldn't forget. We're going to be a demonstration of goodwill. Our behavior is going to convince people more than our words. We're going to carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities, and we're going to continue to demonstrate that we can be sober, considerate, and helpful, regardless of what anybody else or anything, whatever else is happening out there, what anyone says or does. And seeing is believing, it says. And so, really, I'm a sober person, and I'm going to go into meetings. I'm going to show people that there is life after sobriety, because I didn't believe that when I first walked in the door. I thought my life was over. And so, the power of our example is very strong. Just realizing that is a very effective way to help other people by giving them. We're like the candle that goes into the room and lights up brings light into a dark space. We're going to help people to get their little candles lit too. There's a beautiful song about that. I wish I could remember the words, but I was like a candle snuffed out for a long time, and somehow I got lit up again. And I don't think this particular flame anybody could ever blow out. It's more like something I love, like flames coming up. Like, you ain't blowing that one out because you didn't light it, and you can't put it out. This one is eternal, that eternal flame inside. So I can't say enough different ways how vital it was to work with other people for me, and to take other people through this process, and to know that I am serving God. I'm pleasing to God. This is my purpose now, is to be of maximum service to God and to the fellow people around me. I'm paraphrasing. I don't have that one memorized, but if I'm still like living that life of, oh, I'm good, I don't need to do that, I am still sick because I'm still selfish. It's like, if I don't take my little prize that I've won here and go out and share it with everybody else, I'm going to go back into my old dis-ease all over again. And the irony is that the more I give it away, the more I get it. It just happens. And I used to think, how am I going to ever get what I need if I don't go out and grab it and take it and hoard it all to myself? Like, how am I going to survive? And everything is always the opposite of what my little, twisted, distorted mind used to think. So it's great to be restored to sanity, because I've been restored to the truth. And the truth is a lot of things that I didn't used to know. I have a coffee mug that I look at every morning when I drink my tea, because I used to think I'm a piece of crap, and I don't have any value. There's no point in being here. Why do I even exist? I don't know what's, I don't know. And this coffee mug says, God says I am. I'll just show you guys. So it says, God says I am. And then there's 15 different words. Each one is backed up by a scripture. First one is loved, unique, important, forgiven, not alone, protected. I love this one. Created for a purpose, accepted, precious, cared for. These are the things that are true, in God's world. I just have to trust God rather than my finite self, and if I can help other people to get reconnected or connected maybe for the first time to that source of truth, to that source of love and that source of power, I feel like I've had a good life. If I died today, I think I've done a pretty good job. I feel pretty content. My bags are ready, anytime, but I'll stick around for as long as I can. Thanks for letting me share today. It's been a beautiful experience.
Oh, thank you so much, Krissy. Fantastic share. And I've written down a lot of questions here, and I want to remind our live audience, if you have a question for Krissy, please type it in the chat below. If you want to remain anonymous in that, I will be moderating those questions. But if you don't want your first name read when I read those questions, just put anonymous, please, or direct message me. But Krissy, a lot of the things you shared were things that the questions that I wrote down are a lot of before and after, but typically that before and after are before sobriety and after sobriety. I want to go before awakening to after awakening in a lot of these questions. So the first question I have for you is, can you define, now let's define what alcoholism was defined before your spiritual awakening and what it's defined as right now. Did that change at all, what alcoholism is?
Well, I don't think I had a definition of alcoholism, and I didn't want to know. So before, I just thought I was I'm either successfully not drinking or I'm drinking. So I don't have anything to compare with that for you, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So what does it look like today? Well, how do you define alcoholism today then?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Alcoholism. Well, the obvious part is that I have an allergy to alcohol. If I pick up one drink, I have a phenomenon of craving. I have an obsession of the mind that says I should drink. It's going to be nice. Nothing bad's going to happen. And, I have a mental twist on all of that. So that part of it is like a no-brainer for me. I can't drink safely, but alcoholism to me now is all of the spiritual malady. I'm restless, I'm irritable, I'm discontent. I can't seem to handle any situations. Everything baffles me. It's like the opposite of all of the promises, I'm struggling in all of my relationships. I'm still miserable. I'm still unhappy. I'm still depressed. That's alcoholism. I'm in constant conflict with everything and everyone around me. I'm fighting everybody and everything. Um, uh, oh gosh, there's so much. I'm selfish. I'm self-centered. I don't care about anybody else but myself. I'm always in fear. I'm inconsiderate. I mean, that's my alcoholism. It's like a list of character defects, perhaps. Like if you go through, there's a workbook that talks about character defects, and every single one of the characters. I'm impatient, irresponsible. I blame everybody else. I do this thing where I martyr myself. I envy you. I'm jealous. I do, especially one of my favorite character defects that I've always done is self-loathing, and that's a form of pride. One of the forms is arrogance. The other is self-loathing. So it's one extreme or the other. And I'm either so far like spiritually superior than you all, or I've decided, oh my God, you didn't talk to me today. What did I do wrong? I instantly think, oh, I must have said something. I must have done something. They're mad at me. I can do that one today. Like if I think, oh, my kid didn't like text me back in 24 hours. What did I must have offended him. That's the sick, twisted brain. I create stories in my head and I live in some reality that doesn't even exist. That's alcoholism to me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, Krissy. You mentioned earlier in your talk, you said, hey, I'm sober for 14 and a half years. And I was told, hey, if you put your head on your pillow sober, you're a raving success. And after 14 and a half years, it's easy to say, yeah, that's the case. Talk to us a little bit about that breakdown at 14 and a half years, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of that story. What brought you to your knees at that point? Hey, I'm 14 and a half years sober. I'm attending these meetings. I'm doing these things. I think I'm being of service to others. What is happening? So what happened?
That's a good question. So I used to think I was in a relationship and we would break up, get back together, break up, get back together. And one of the things he said to me is, Krissy, you can't be alone. So I proved to myself after how they tell you in meetings, like typically you'll hear things like stay out of relationships for the first year. That's some advice that I've heard in meetings. And I never did that because I was always in one. So I never opted to choose that particular suggestion. And then after I had been broken up and together and back together and back together enough times, and then we were separated, I stayed out of a relationship and I said, oh, I know what my problem is. My problem is I can't be alone. I need to learn to be able to be alone with myself. So I white knuckled being alone for a year. I did it. I proved to myself, kind of like the man of 30 proved to himself he could not drink for a period of time. I proved to myself that I could stay out of a relationship and handle being alone for a year. And then I got into a relationship thinking, I got this. And I went into another relationship with somebody else there. And, what happened? I brought the same fearful, insecure person with all of my, I didn't have a solid sense of self-esteem. I was still I had interfered with, threatened, and harmed self-esteem, ambitions, and all those other things that I brought them right into that relationship. So when that failed, it really crushed me, not so much about losing the person, but realizing I'm way more messed up than I thought I was. I thought I was so much better than I was. And that's when I had the spiritual bottom. So that kind of propelled me to say, something's really wrong here. I got to do something different.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that was a spiritual bottom for me too. And I realized that my way of doing things, of white knuckling through whatever it was, for me, it was food, would be enough to be able to go back and, well, drink like a gentleman again, and whatever that looks like. But yeah, what a mess. What a mess when I train my own plans and designs, right? My own little plans and designs. Next question I have for you, Krissy. You said something that I thought was super powerful. In fact, I've got 3 asterisks around it because it just meant so much to me. And maybe this was just something you said in passing, but you said forgetfulness is just another word for oblivion. And we drink to oblivion. We do whatever we do to oblivion, but forgetfulness is just another word for that. Can you dive just a little bit deeper into that? Because it meant a lot to me, and I want to see what your thoughts are on it deeper than what you shared earlier.
Absolutely. So the big book on XXX which is part of the doctor's opinion. The doctor says, I have to find it. He said, there are situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. And so obviously the supreme sacrifice is, I'm going to just go ahead and kill myself now. Continuing to fight, on the other hand, is like page 25 talks about, I'm going to either go on to the bitter end, trying to blot out the consciousness of my intolerable situation as best I can. And to me, to blot out the consciousness of anything means I don't want to remember it. I don't want to be conscious to this. I want to become unconscious, which is just another way of saying I want to forget this. Oblivion, in one dictionary that I use, defines it as a cessation of remembrance. So if I drink enough, I'll forget. I won't remember this. And I drank a lot to forget what it was about, whether it was how I was feeling about something or a shame or a humiliation. It was my anesthesia. You know, it was like an anesthetic. And it made me numb. It made me numb to all of those things that I couldn't handle, I couldn't face. And quite frankly, I stayed under the impact of that anesthesia quite some time into sobriety. And I don't think I really started to become unnumb completely until I finally surrendered and did this whole let God come in. It was like I was still kind of half asleep, sleepwalking in life, not really facing up to all those things. Like I did a good job of distracting myself away from the painful things. Like I worked, I had this, I did that, I went to school, I was a good parent. I mean, fill in the blanks, all the things that I did, and it all helped me to kind of divert away from dealing with that thing, whatever those things were. So to go into a state of oblivion for me is another way of saying anything that can take me out of that reality and into some other reality. It's an escape. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you for diving deeper on that. I really appreciate it. I love the further explanation. Thank you. We have a question coming in from an anonymous member of our live audience here. This person says, Krissy, when challenges arise, such as the resurfacing of old behaviors, what is the most efficient method to realign oneself with the flow of God's Spirit in your experience?
Yeah. Sometimes I trip and stumble and it takes me a while to get back up. You know, I'm a human being. I think really for me, it's plugging back in. And I have certain people that I call and I know what they're going to do. The first thing they're going to say is, let's pray. And, you know, so they get me to slow down and pause and, hey, let's remember to bring God into this, you know, like consciously contact God in this. There's a page in the book that I wanted to talk about. I forgot. So it's actually good. There's a line on page 70. It talks about when we fall short of our chosen ideals and stumble. And, you know, some people say if you do that, you're going to drink again. I've heard other people say, you know, that the same person that I brought in will drink again. In other words, I have to change. There's a psychic change that has to happen. But what if I fall back? What if I relapse into old behaviors, not necessarily drinking, but just those old things that I've been asking God to help me to grow out of? You know, there's a desire to grow in the image and likeness of our Creator, which is more like step 6 and 7. You know, first I was good not drinking, but now I have the desire to grow and to learn what God's will for me is and to grow in the image and likeness of our Creator. So it says on page 70 that does it mean that we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but it's only a half truth when we fall or stumble or fall short of our ideals. It says it depends on us and our motives. If we are sorry for what we've done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and we will have learned our lesson. The thing is, sometimes we're not sorry and we continue the same conduct and then we harm other people. And that's when it's a real problem. but they have the 10th step process. All these steps are designed to help keep us, like first we clean up the debris from the past. We've created a lot of wreckage, but then we have tools to kind of stay in the weekly cleaning, daily cleaning process, and so I do those things. I check in with myself and other people, and I ask myself, am I staying in the unselfish or the selfish? Am I contributing to life or am I not? Am I living as much as I can in the will of God or not? And if I'm not, I ask God to help me. And I know that I'm not going to be perfect. So I guess maybe it's just like they say, spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. And yet I know that everything is working out for good. There's a scripture that supports that too. Like all things work for good for those who love the Lord and perform his works, So I trust that. Everything happened for a reason. I don't need to question it. That if I question it, I'm playing God again.
Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful. So you mentioned that in those first 14 and a half years of sobriety, you felt like you were helping people. And then as you look back at it, you're like, but was I really? So what did helping people look like to you before in those first 14 and a half years? And what does that look like to you today?
I think I helped people. I don't mean to negate that the things that I did had no value. The difference is that now, because I'm sacrificing of myself and getting myself out of the way, I feel the presence of God more. So it's like I just created barriers to my experience of God because I was helping people, but not realizing where the help was coming from. I wasn't giving credit to the power of God. I was assuming that I was helping them. And I can't really help people as much as the power of God can. So there's a feeling internally that changed for me. I don't know if that makes sense. I was helpful to people and I did help people. And so it's like both, and I wasn't able to experience the fruit of the Spirit, joy and love and peace and all those beautiful fruits of the Spirit because I considered myself separate. I was like a branch separated from the vine. And I thought I was doing it all over here and that I didn't need the vine. But once I really realized that I was really deeply connected to that, the effectiveness of what I was doing with other people got exponentially more powerful too. Like I became more powerful just because the power of God is working in and through me. So it's not me being powerful. It's just me allowing the power to work in and through me, which is the most effective. I think that's all I can say about that.
Yeah. And you referred back to one of the first things, actually, it's the first thing I wrote down from your share. You said you were doing joyful things, but not feeling joy. And you referenced that just now. Talk to us just a little bit more about that. The frustration maybe behind, hey, I should be feeling some joy here. There should be some fulfillment here, but it's not happening. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's kind of like there was always a dark cloud over the joy. It's kind of how I experienced life too. Like all I could really focus on was the dark cloud. So the joy was there all along. I just couldn't see it or experience it. I wasn't able to feel it. My focus was really directed toward, they say somewhere in the book, we have this magic magnifying mind, and my magnifying mind with my lenses if I was wearing glasses, they had like a specific vision on them. And all I could see was the pain and the suffering and the not enoughness and the yeah buts. And I lived with this sense of entitlement. So I couldn't even appreciate the things I was getting. I had so many things that got in the way of my ability to feel those things as joy, and kind of like incapable of being satisfied with what I had, as if I needed more. There was a need involved, and the more I needed to have it, I believed I needed these things, certain things, to be happy, and they would give me a temporary happiness. Like the book says, we will rest. We're under the delusion that we can rest satisfaction. We're victim to a delusion that we can rest satisfaction from and happiness by managing other people and life. And that was kind of the attitude that I was going about it. Like, even though I was doing these joyful things, it was like I was doing them to get happy instead of being happy while I was doing them. I don't know. I always had the order of operations wrong, and so, but from the time I was like, as far back as I can remember, I would look back at things and I would see only the things that supported my story. My story is I was a fearful child. I was this, I was that. And like, I could tell you all the evidence that like supported that story. And so my eyes were trained to look for evidence to support the story I believed, which was, by the way, inaccurate. And, like it was a story that was keeping me sick. So like scales of pride falling from my eyes, like helped me to be able to see a whole new world, and I had to become willing to let go of my old story. That's why that set aside prayer was so important too. I have helped me set aside everything I have ever told myself, all the stories I've come to believe, everything, all my ideas, emotions, and attitudes, cast them aside so I can have a new experience. I guess I just had to be willing and have the desire for a new experience. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And I love you bringing that back to the set aside prayer and just letting me, well, basically those old ideas die so that a new idea can come in, and that open-mindedness that's required there. I have a question that has come in from an anonymous member who probably from this question, probably something that you've spoken about before, and I want to hear about this. It says, ask Krissy to discuss stopping boxing with God because your arms are too short. So talk to us a little bit about that. That sounds awesome.
It's so good. It's so good. Well, after that failed personal relationship with the guy back in 2021, and I started listening to these other meetings on Zoom, and I was starting to receive messages from people like maybe even like Jesus calling readings and stuff. And I could almost tolerate it because I liked the message, but I was still kind of in a fight with like Jesus and that whole thing. And, but I could tolerate it because it didn't actually say Jesus in the reading. I liked the message though. I was like, I like the message they're sending. And then I'm listening to one of our favorite speakers, probably this person that asked the question, but, and he talked about, he said, don't box with God. Your arms are too short, and I almost fell to the floor. I was like, oh my God, I've been in a fight with God my whole life. And I just realized it was like, I am exhausted. I've been getting like TKO'd over and over and over again. And it was like just such a relief because I knew the truth of that statement. I have been in a fight with God. And it was like, I'm not winning. I'm not getting anywhere. And when I realized I don't want to fight anymore, it was so beautiful. But it's just a powerful statement. Don't box with God. Your arms are too short. Got me.
And it's a beautiful visual too. I just envision, and not that, a playful, like when my son was really young and he'd get frustrated or just want to fight, I just put my hand on his forehead and he'd be swinging and, not able to do anything, and it wasn't anything in violence. It's just like, hey, let's find a different way of doing this. Love that. All right. So Krissy, before we start wrapping up here, what does your connection with God look like today? What does your step 11 morning, evening, whatever routine look like today?
It varies. I heard one time in a meditation, this line, it really got me. The meditation said, imagine you woke up today and the only things that you had left were the things that you thanked God for yesterday. And I went, oh shit. Like, wow, I wouldn't have anything because I didn't thank God for any of it yesterday. So I make a point of thanking God, like right off the bat. Thank you for waking me up. When I go to bed, I say, thank you, God, for this beautiful day. Thank you for all the gifts I have. Thank you is a big deal for me, and I know who I'm thanking. I'm thanking the creator. I'm not grateful to the created. I'm grateful to the creator who gifted me the creations, so that's one thing. I'm on a lot of meetings and I work with a lot of sponsees. So I am always plugged into God. I mean, every single time I'm with another person, we're saying a prayer, we're talking about the steps, we're talking about God. So it's kind of like a constant in my day, whether I intend it or not. And when I really want to like stop and pause and enjoy. And I know that I'm connecting to God. For me, I get out in nature and I enjoy the beauty. Like when I'm surrounded by some of the most beautiful things, I go to a lake or walk through the woods and I just breathe it all in and I know I'm connected. I mean, I'm always connected to God. There's no way I can't be because God is everything, everywhere, all the time. And I feel it and I connect consciously easiest when I'm experiencing the beauty. So the beauty for me is a window in to experience the gifts and the grace of God. But when I'm working with somebody else and I'm talking to you and you're talking to me, it's like a three-way conversation because I'm always including God. It's just like an unspoken deal I have. I don't have to say, what do you think, God? But I'm talking to somebody else and like they'll be talking to me and I'll hear their words, but I also hear another set of words. It's kind of like, and what about this? It's like thoughts come to me and I can tell the difference when the thought is coming from me, which comes like from this crazy thing in here between my two ears. But there's another one that like when I feel it coming to me. And sometimes I feel like a nudge, like I'm getting nudged, pushed in to go do something. I know that that's God compelling me, pushing me towards something. When I follow those nudges and this word obey, I used to hate that word. I'd be like, don't talk about obeying. That pisses me off. I have so many fights with so many words. That's another thing. I was in a fight with a word. I'm in a fight with a three-letter word, G-O-D. I'm in a fight with the word J-E-S-U-S. I'm in a fight with the word B-I-B-L-E. I'm in a fight with the word P-R-A-Y. All of those things, but like, I just know that God speaks however he chooses. Sometimes it's through like just I get a sense that I'm supposed to be somewhere and I go. I know I should say something, I say it. And then sometimes I ignore it and I go, nah, I don't want to do that. And then I regret it. Always. It's very clear to me. The most recent occasion I had somebody message me link to a meeting and I was like, I'd already been on 3 meetings. I'd been with sponsee, worked. I had a busy day. I was like, nah, I don't need another meeting. I put my phone down, but it kept like my phone. It just kept like, Krissy, look at the phone. I just kept going back. I looked at it like 4 times and I kept saying, no, I don't need a meeting. I'm good. I'm going to go watch Netflix. I'm busy. Right. But I kept going back to that link. And so finally, without knowing where it was taking me, I just clicked on it. I'm like, fine, I'll click on it. Took me to a meeting. There was 3 other people. And the guy says, hey, so-and-so, here comes your sponsor. And I was like looking around the room, like, what's he talking about? And I'm like, you talking to me? He's like, yeah, meet your new sponsee. And I was like, wait, what's happening here? And I ended up having a new sponsee because I followed the link. I followed the directions. There was, it was divine intervention, and I could have easily ignored it. Easily. And I would have missed that window of opportunity. So I just have to listen for God, pay attention, follow the directions, follow the dictates of a higher power, and great events will come. That's how it works for me anyways.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that experience. Even that's such a specific and an amazing experience. I really appreciate that. Before we wrap up, do you have any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us?
I just stick around till the miracle happens. Pray for willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness. If you're not happy yet, maybe there's more available to you. You just don't know it yet. So stay open-minded and practice these principles. Learn the steps. Trust God. Trust God. Clean house. Help others. They say, and it's true. But I have to develop my personal relationship with God every day. Otherwise, I'm going in the wrong direction. So I guess that's where I would leave it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Krissy. That was a fantastic RICO 12 weekly speaker meeting. If we missed you out there in the live audience or in the podcast audience, if you have other questions you'd like to pose to Krissy or like to get in contact with her, please contact me at rico12pod@gmail.com or jump in our WhatsApp group, our Facebook page, different things that we do to connect. Come check these things out and we'll get those additional questions answered. I want to remind everybody that next week we will be resuming this. Cameron F. will be our speaker. He's been a speaker several times here on RICO 12. His topic next week will be responsible sponsorship versus codependent relationships. And I really look forward to his talk. One more item of business on that. Over the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be off the grid for various reasons. But Silvio D, who has also been a speaker here, and he's also the host of the 12 Steps and 12 Questions podcast, and he will be hosting and filling in for me those weeks, and he's going to do a great job. He's a great host, and I really look forward to him filling in, and I'm grateful to him for filling in so I can go be with family, go get off the grid, do some backpacking, and enjoy some things. So let's launch off into the rest of the day with the prayer of St. Francis, the 11th step prayer that Krissy will say for us.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Have a little moment of quiet, thinking about all those people who haven't found this yet. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Krissy. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back, and when you do, come all the way in. Sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
I've seen stars fall from above. I've fallen in and out of love. I've been high and I've been low. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. I've seen a boy become a man. He got lost without a plan. He's so far away from home. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. I'm looking for the words to say. You make the world a better place, and I can call that place my home. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. So let me see just what you need to set you free, so we can be. I saw stars fall from above. I fell in and out of love. I got high and I fell low. But now I know that I just can't do this on my own. just can't do this on my own. I just can't do this on my own.